It's another Block 2 video. You voted for this. If you want this entire channel to just be about the Block 2, I'll do it. Just let me know. So, this is the Mark 18. Now, we're doing a different format today. Something a bit more fluid, a bit more natural, a bit less scripted. If you wouldn't mind leaving a comment when you're done watching, let me know how I did, then that would be much appreciated, just so I can know what's good and what's not. Mark 18. Now, I called this a Block 2. Why did I call this a Block 2? Well, whether this is an M4 or a Mark 18 depends on whether it is in Army or Navy inventory. So there's a few examples of this. You can see the SR25 up there. If that was indoctrinated, if it was taken into naval inventory, then it would be outfitted in a certain way, certain surface finish, certain furniture, certain accessories, etc., etc., and it'd be called the Mark 11. If it were taken into Army inventory, it'd be called the M110, and then outfitted in a different way that looks much more like that. So this, when this was first popularised, it was in naval hands, and therefore it was called the Mark 18. However, when this was taken into popularity, when it became popular, it was like, oh, it's in Army hands, so your SFG, ODA, blah, blah, blah. Army hands, it was known as the M4 Block 2. There are ways in which you can build a Mark 18. This particular one is a Tokyo Marui base, so based off a MWS CQBR. It is not based off a Tokyo Marui Mark 18. There is a very good reason for that. By standard, the barrel nut of a Tokyo Marui Mark 18 is not very easily accessible. You require a special tool for it. We've covered that in a previous video. Basically, if you're ever going to change the rail of a Mark 18, don't buy a Mark 18. So, and also, if you are happy to just have a Mark 18 for all time, cool, sure. It's also worth noting, however, that the colouring on the standard Mark 18 valve for the Tokyo Marui Mark 18, it's not that good. So if we cover... unscripted intentional things of comparison. Is that going to stay? Thank you. So that is one of those. If we open our drawer of bits, we have a unpainted Mark 18 rail. We put the two side by side and you can see there is a difference. So the colouring of reproduction rails is very different to the colouring of modern genuine RIS2s. This is a genuine RIS2. These have changed colour over the years. These do change colour batch to batch and part to part. So even my rear delta ring, I guess you would call it, is a different colour to the main handguard. So there's a lot of colour variance. By standard, a reproduction would be a lot darker, a lot shinier, and these have a lot softer edges on them. You won't tear your hands up and gloves up anywhere as much as if you're using a reproduction. These are actually kind of sharp by comparison. Back to the Mark 18. Oh, so if this is in MARSOC, this would be called a Mark 18. I don't know what's true anymore. So, what shall we cover? We will cover the externals first and then the internals. So, muzzle device. Up front we have a reproduction surefire 4-prong. I'm apparently having trouble with words today, I apologise. This is made by Airsoft Artisan and it pairs up with a SOCOM RC1 that is also made by Airsoft Artisan. You can also get an Angry Gun, one of these, and there's 5KU on the lower price scale. Angry Gun has a reputation of selling kind of mid-tier products at a high-tier price. They do have fairly frequent quality control issues as well. So I try and stay away from Angry Gun whenever I can. This, however, Airsoft Artisan, I've had good experiences with them for quite a few products now, and I'm a fan of them. Next up, the light. This is an Olight Odin. These do not have a good reputation at all. Whenever you tell people that you have an Olight Odin, they think that you are going to blow up and die. Why is this? Well, one time they did blow up and they did kill someone. So the story goes that a chap was working on his car and had I'm not sure if it was an Odin in particular, but it was an O-Light, and they have this exposed charging cap at the rear. This allows for the pressure pad in order to function, and it also allows for charging through that port. He had it in his mouth, so the saliva gets onto this exposed port, shorts it out, the battery explodes while it is in his mouth. He unfortunately dies. This has only happened once. If it had killed multiple people, I don't think the company would be running anymore. They claim that they fixed it. I haven't personally put it in my mouth to check, and I'm not going to, given the risks. For me, I have it with that cap not exposed, and so I use this in the rain, and I don't have a problem. The reputation that they have is off of one incident. It's an unfortunate reputation to have for sure. Personally, I use it because it is very, very bright. If I poke it back here, we can see how hot that is. To put that into perspective, so 2000 lumens, I don't know the candela to be exact, which is unfortunately the more useful number. However, between these lights here, that one there is 90,000 lux, so 90,000 candela, and it's on its max brightness at the moment. You saw how hot this appears compared to that light. There is a distance differential as well, but you start to get the idea of how bright this is. You don't usually hear people describe lights as daylight bright. I would describe that as daylight bright. So that's why I like it for that. However, for a non-painted build, I will occasionally have a non-painted Mark 18 setup built out as well, but today this particular receiver is built out as a full-length Block 2. I will have a reproduction WMX200. It is passable. If we poke it back in the same place there, we can see the brightness difference. You get the idea. This is a much cheaper light. I believe this one eats through batteries as well. It's not great, but it looks okay. That's fine. PEQ box. For this one, this is entirely cosmetic. I do not have a painted proper PEQ box. It saves weight. I don't do CQB, so I have no use for a laser. Again, this is entirely cosmetic. And there's a few things here that are entirely cosmetic. When it comes to Airsoft, I'm not big on the cosplays type side of things when it comes to uniform, but when it comes to guns, yeah, I'm not too fussed about the really, really anal clone correctness, but I do like my stuff to look decent. Mark 18s have PEQs, therefore this has a PEQ. Saving weight as well. I've had a few injuries in the past. That means sometimes I want stuff a bit lighter, and so that is why that is there. For alternative PEQs, we have, if we bring out this one again, this is the FMA. This does not have any visible light capability aside from an aiming laser, and this costs about £200, £200 or £300 depending on where you get it from. It is fully IR capable, and and the box looks good. Happy days. That is the most expensive option that I have, and I wouldn't really recommend it unless you are very, very keen on the look, or you use night vision. I do not. For a cheaper option, there is the Sommergear PEQ 15. This is about £60, much, much cheaper, and it looks okay. So up to this point, I have used this, but I just recently got the FMA. Coming back, we have the pressure point for the O-Light. The O-Light pressure pad is a little bit bulky, but if you do want, you can take it out of its housing type thing and tape it down somewhere if you like. We then have a Tokyo Marui stubby grip. Now, this is a replica of the Tango Down stubby foregrip. I am a big fan of these. They are very comfortable for me. If I want to use it like that, I can use it like that. If I want to use it as a hand stop, I can use it as a hand stop. Or if I want to use it over the top, which is how I most commonly use it, then I can. I am a very big fan of the Tokyo Marui grip in particular, over the real one over the real mechanism, over the GMP, etc, etc. The reason being, this does not use the same affixation method as the real one. For a real one, you have to push these tabs down forcefully and then slide it up and down like that. And in fact, I can show you. I'll be back in a sec. This is the VFC Scar H, the Mark 17. It is rather nice, and we have a long version. This is again a replica. This is made by, I think this is a GMP. Now, this has the same affixing method as a real one. So we pull down both of those tabs and we're going to try and move it. So we go one, nope. Maybe if we go top down? Just pointing it into my leg, don't worry about it, it is unloaded. Aha. And now we start to have movement, but I can't move beyond the pec, so I'd have to take the pec off. It's not good, dude. It looks good though, but also because this is probably because it's a reproduction, it does have wobble. So the issue that we come across is potentially a tolerance issue up top. Piccadilly does have quite precise measurements for what makes what, and then how that all is supposed to fit together. I would imagine that the grip is modelled with an oversizing to try and accommodate specs, to try and accommodate rails that are out of spec. I'm having trouble speaking today, I apologise. So when it's on and when you're in it, up and in it, it feels totally fine. But if you don't have it on in your hand, so to speak, and wobble it around, then you can feel it wobble it around. Anyway, VFC Scar H. Maybe we'll cover that in a future video. So that was the Tokyo Marui copy of the TD Stubby grip. It's pretty good. I'm a fan of this. Now, rail covers. So we have rail panels underneath and on the support hand side. It's an upgrade. I wouldn't say it is absolutely necessary. I wouldn't say that these rails are so sharp that they are not safe to use. Absolutely. But you really do feel it. So for these ones, they are flush with the rail. For the Block 2, this is again, genuine wrist 2 and the genuine rail panels. They're not flush, feel slightly different. I wouldn't say they're better, I wouldn't say they're worse. It's just different ways of doing things. Then we also have the cable, tidy, whatever rail panel on the side. Same for the Block 2. Just keeps everything nice and in line. Sling points. CQD. So this is a reproduction CQD front sling point from FMA. I have one on here. I have one on there. I've got maybe 2 or 3 others lying around. I'm a fan of these. I wouldn't say they're probably not perfect, for sure, but I like the look of them, and they do the job. You have screws that go down either through the top or through the bottom. Some people turn them upside down, I think. So this one is turned upside down, so that the screws come through the top. The fancy reason for this is that if you have it the right way round, I'll show you. If you have it the right way round, then the screws come up from the bottom, and so recoil time, etc., those screws can come loose and then fall out. It's an airsoft gun. You're not going to get that much recoil out of them, but at the same time, it's an airsoft sling mount. It's an airsoft sling mount, and so the screws are not going to be as good. The threading is not going to be as good. Yeah, it's a factor, but I wouldn't say it's a major enough factor to warrant placing it one way or over another unless you have a personal preference. I personally haven't cared. It's whichever way it's gone on, and then that's fine. In terms of how that sling point works, it uses a HK clip. You can also route paracord through there, but then I would say the metal is perhaps sharp enough that I wouldn't trust that to long-term use. So HK clip, and then that is on and fine. Of course I put it... No, that's not upside down. HK clips are pretty good, and they do the job as long as you get a good one. If you get crappy AliExpress or whatever brands, clones, etc., then you're going to have trouble with the locking arm starting to become misaligned, having issues with the spring inside like popping out. It's really annoying. Do not buy cheap HK clips because you're just leaving yourself in for a bad time. While we're here, we may as well cover the sling. This is a Ferro Concepts Slingster. These are pretty good. I have 3 of them personally. They do the job. They're light. I don't know if weight is an issue. The stiffness is fine. I started with the Slingster. I haven't had any reason to go anywhere else with them, to try any other brands. At some point I'm looking into branching out a little bit, but the Slingster does the job. It's totally fine. We also have a little like elastic thing here. Slide down the elastic thing, and then that prevents the hook from making noise up front. Hook making noise on the rear is not really an issue, just because how the weight of the gun works when it's on your shoulder. That's not a problem, but this is, therefore, elastic thing up front. We'll cover why the rear sling point is there and not back in a bit. Next, receivers. Stock Tokyo Marui receiver on this one. You will find some people say that you need to go Z parts for the fancy aluminium, etc. I don't agree. If you're using a ridiculously heavy barrel, then perhaps there's an argument to be made there that you require the extra strength. However, if you get an extra heavy barrel for a gas airsoft gun, then you dull out the experience so much of actually firing the thing, because the extra weight dampens any feeling of recoil. I'm not a fan, personally. So I like to keep it light to a point, and so I have not seen any reason to upgrade from the stock receiver. Magazines. This is a stock Tokyo Marui magazine. It is either a V2 or V3. I have not cut the propane tube that is inside here on the V2 and V3. There is no need to do so. Stock Tokyo Marui magazine. Otherwise, at some point I'm looking to try out the Garda airtight rubber. I do have one magazine around that has that, but it is in testing, and until it is good for a while, I'm not going to be putting it on everything else, because apart from anything else, it's a bit of a faff to fit them. A little bit. So, stock magazine. The sticker type thing is just the UID. We've covered that in a previous video. The QR code links to a Google Doc, and then the Google Doc has information on the gun. Keeping with the externals, let's cover the paint. So the paint is not Krylon. Krylon is considered to be the go-to for this kind of thing, and that's absolutely fair because it's good. However, when I wanted to paint this, there was no Krylon in stock anywhere, so I went with this. Is Deco Color military paint. The logo looks like that. The front looks like that. This is RAW 7016, and it is not it is not what I used to paint this. This is like a dark grey, so don't use that. It was like mud brown, uniform, olive, something else. It is not as good as Krylon. It is not as saturated as Krylon, and it doesn't hold up to abuse as well as Krylon. I found that I like that because it has worn away in such a way that it looks like it's been used a lot more than it has. The obvious example being around the magwell, where paint has started to come off, and around the under the magazine release, where my finger usually is. It's worn away. It's started to tell its story a lot faster than Krylon would. So frankly, I'm actually fine with it. There is a difference that is visible on the charging handle, and we'll cover what the charging handle is in a sec. So the charging handle was done with Krylon, and we can see that it's a bit more saturated than the more olive tone of the rest of the gun, just because it was done later and the paint had run out. I personally like the less saturated look. So that's that. Let's cover pistol grip. This is an A2 pistol grip. I have previously had a BCM Mod 3 on this. The BCM Mod 3 has a less severe grip angle, so more upright. I have joints issues, so trying to lessen the pressure on my joints as much as possible is beneficial to me. However, I do prefer the look of the A2 pistol grip, and so I have put that on there at the moment as my wrists are not having particular issues. Let's go back up the front a second, we'll cover that. So we have this TD stubby grip here to keep that grip a bit more upright because it's a bit further back. It's a bit further back than the Block 2. For a normal Block 2, I have my grip further out, and therefore, as we move the hand out, the angle changes of how much your wrist can take. If we were all back here, and we're using the handguard at the far back, then we notice our wrist is at a very severe position. I would not be able to hold that for a minute, not a chance. So as your grip moves further out, you can be less severe with that angle of your support hand. However, then you come into strength issues. Depending on how I feel before the game day, I may actually put a tan version, doesn't really matter that it's tan, I've got a black one as well, of this up here, because then it reduces strain a bit more, and if I'm feeling a bit weak, then I'll pop this on and I'll have a better time of it. That being said, I prefer the look of this, and so if I can tolerate this, then I will do so. For the Mark 18, however, you have to come in so much that you do need that I do need the grip. Your experiences may vary. You will see some people do the Magpul AFG there and still get on fine. But anyway, short aside for that, let's get back to we covered the pistol grip. Let's cover the sling point. Okay, rear sling point is a copy of the CQD sling point. This came with the gun. The gun, like I said previously, is the Tokyo Marui CQBR version of the MWS. It is not the Mark 18 version of the MWS, but it did come with a 10.3 inch barrel. We'll cover internals later. So, CQD sling point comes with a point on the right, 2 points on the left, and if you hook into that, then it's a good time. For this setup here, we are using the 2 closest points available. The difference between mounting your sling points close together and far apart is control when you're in the gun versus control when it is slung across you. Very simple. You can compromise one way or another however you like. So for example, for this one, it's a bit longer, and therefore when it is slung down, you do want a little bit more control, otherwise it swings around noticeably more with this longer 14.5 inch barrel than this 10.3 inch barrel. So for this, I sling it back here on the stock, and I do not have a CQD sling mount there. I do have one available, but so far I have not had any reason to unpack it until I move this to a Mark 18 setup, which I chop and change every now and then. So, full length Block 2, I mount these slightly further apart to make that work with the longer length. With the Mark 18, there is no requirement for that, and it is absolutely fine with those closer sling mounts. Next up, charging handle. This is another one that is entirely cosmetic. This is the GMP PRI copy. So this is a Gasbuster style. It's slightly bigger, slightly chunkier than the standard GI one. Do I have a standard GI one? So if we compare the two here, we can see that the standard one is a lot thinner and with a different handle. Other than that, there's really no difference at all. So if you're not looking to be crazy clone correct, don't bother. There's no reason for it. Now, I'm going to pop the magazine out this time before dropping the bolt. The reason I'm doing that is because otherwise the nozzle rides across the top of the follower, which is not an overly big deal, but it does contribute to the loading arm bending upwards over time. Quick aside. Next up, Buffer tube and castle nut. The castle nut is stock. The buffer tube is a GMP 6 position, one piece. The reason we change these is entirely preventative in nature. The standard Tokyo Marui buffer tube is a 2-piece. There is an extra piece on the end that screws in. That's not usually a problem. However, if you use a heavy buffer setup with high power gas, then it can back that piece out over time, and maybe it will come off. I've never seen it actually coming off. I've never seen it actually separating. However, an extra buffer tube is 30 quid. It's a preventative measure. And there's a couple other things internally that are preventative measures like that. We'll cover those too in a bit. Stock. CTR. I am a big fan of the Magpul CTR. This is of course a genuine example. Same for the Block 2. There's a few things here that I like. Let's find the SOPMod stock. So this is a common alternative, and we'll get the Block 2 out to show this. So, for the SOPMod stock, it is, like I say, a common alternative to the CTR. The CTR is considered an upgrade, I guess. So we'll pop the SOPMod in here, and we'll show why I'm not a fan of it. So, I am not personally a fan of the SOPMod because of these wings. The issue is here, I commonly use Comtacs as ear protection, and when I'm getting around the wings, I bump the Comtacs on the stock. It's not a big deal, but it is a minor annoyance that is solved by using a CTR. So if I come in here, it's not a problem at all because there is not that wing, and so I'm coming in at it from a more sideways angle and not having that problem with the headset. So let's pop this off. Also, while we're on the subject of SOPMods stocks, the rubber band around the front is a common thing you will see. It is forward of the plunger. The reason being, if you don't have it forward of the plunger, then this part here can be bumped very, very, very easily. And so if you go prone and rest it against something and bring it up like that, you will immediately bump that because you'll brush past it on your way up to your shoulder, and then your stock collapses into your face, and it's really annoying. So you have a rubber band there to make it a more deliberate movement. Let's pop the CTR back on. As we saw with the CTR, it does also have a QD point on the back here. Like I've said, when we were covering the sling points, I use this on the full length Block 2 for more control. I do not require it on the Magpul. There is also a couple of other options for a slim stock other than the CTR. Let's cover those. Irene. So this is another example of a slim stock that you can see being clone correct on Mark 18s and full length Block 2s. You guys didn't vote for this one to be in the video? It's okay. The issue with this is, so that's the car stock, car 15 stock, and we also have the waffle stock here. The issue with these is they do not have a rubber butt pad. So the issue that I have had in the past personally is that you bring it up and then over time it slips. It's already slipping. It doesn't hold there. The games that I play, I don't think I've ever played a game at my local sites that goes below 2 hours. So you cannot be properly tensioning it against your shoulder to look through the scope or whatever all of the time. It's not feasible. So something with a bit of extra traction is very beneficial to me. So if I do the same again with here, I'm not pushing it into my shoulder at all, and I'm not having a problem at all. That is why I use the CTR specifically. It solves the two problems that I have had, both the version with the wings, with the SOPMod stock, where I've had it bumping against my Comtacs and being annoying, and the stock without a rubber butt pad. Then I have the traction issue on my shoulder. So that is why I've gone with the CTR. With that covered, I believe that is our externals done. You do not need all of this to make a Mark 18. I've forgotten the optic. Let's cover the optic. This is a Holy Warrior Elkin Spectre with a Holy Warrior? I think it's a Holy Warrior reproduction Doctor dot on top. I am a fan of the scope, I'm a fan of the look. There is some detractors that do not like the Elkin Spectre. Their opinions are valid, however, I do not agree with them personally. One of the main complaints about the Elkin Spectre is the eye relief. So if I come in here, this is my perfect eye relief position. This is longer than an ACOG, where people say it's too short, and it's shorter than an LPVO, which a lot of people would say is too long. If I take this, this is a Vortex Razor HD Gen 2E, not a reproduction. If I put this out here, that is my perfect eye relief for that. I'll make sure that you can actually see that. You wouldn't be wrong for saying that's a bit long, isn't it? So, the Spectre and this reproduction is shorter than that, but longer than an ACOG. For me, it feels good. That's nice. It does have the feature that it's often lauded for, I don't know, its main feature, being that 4 times to 1 times capability that it can switch. In theory, the thing is that you're supposed to do is bang, 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 switch, and you're good, and you're in 1 times, and you're in 4 times. That is the theory. In practice, you're in 4 times, you're in 1 times, you're in 4 times, you're in 1 times. Even if you do not have a red dot sight like this one, you still do have iron sights that can be mounted in any of these 3 positions. You don't. I have very rarely used the 1 times on this, so I don't think it is necessary. However, it is something that comes with the scope. I like the scope. There you go. This dot does not have Cowitness capability. I am a fan of having Cowitness capability. So if we take this one here, which is currently bare, and we'll take this and plop this on top. This is a T1 mount that I have made myself, and if we bring it round, I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see that, probably not. I'll get some POV footage of that for you. We can see that we can co-witness the iron sights through the dots. Why do I like this? Well, I have a bit of astigmatism, and I shoot a lot from light into dark and dark into light. What can happen then is if you're shooting from light into dark, or in dark in general, you need the dot to be dim enough that it's not blowing out that astigmatism really, really badly. However, if you have it dark enough to see properly in the dark and then bring it into the light, you cannot see the dots. So if you then set it up to be light enough to see in the light, and then you go under tree cover and you're starting to look in like bunkers and really dark spaces, you can't see the dot, it's all blown out. Unfortunate. So what I do, I try and find a middle ground as much as I can, but it is pretty common practice for me to come up into a light area, bring the dot up, I can't see the dot. So that's why I like to have a co-witness of iron sights. I do it on this whenever I can. I do it on my pistol as well, and that's why I like that. T1. This is a Vortex Crossfire, by the way. So that is why I tend to prioritize co-witness maybe a bit more than other people do. So, dot, scope. The mount is just arms mount. You hit it with a hammer and it's fine. I think that is now externals covered. Yes, it is. Okay. So let's go from a slightly more internal perspective and start looking at the internals. I will cover something external that I missed as well, though. If I bring it over here, we can see a silver washer here. This is a spacer. Excuse me. That is linked to a rubber O-ring underneath. The correct way of fixing a muzzle device like this to the barrel would be to tighten it down as much as possible. Excuse me. Tighten it down as much as possible and use barrel shims like this. You may be wondering if I have prepared everything on my desk for this video. The answer is no, I just have too many things on my desk. So the correct way would be to use barrel shims, tighten it down properly until it is in the correct orientation with no elastic elements, I guess you would say, like that rubber washer. However, I switch around muzzle devices quite a lot, and so that is why I prefer the rubber O-ring with then a washer type thing covering it. There is also a grub screw underneath, however the grub screw for this one is stripped. I need to get another one, no biggie. And so that is why that is that, and that is how you can get a proper orientation of your muzzle device one way or another, either barrel shims or a rubber O-ring with a cover over the top. You don't want to use a rubber O-ring without the cover on the top, because then when you're tightening it down, it is shearing the top of the O-ring and you can have problems. Alright, it is time to cover internals. So, in a barrel, stock Tokyo Marui. There is no problem at all with the stock Tokyo Marui in a barrel. Bucking, hop rubber, whatever you want to call it, also stock. No issue there. Hop arm. This is the one thing that I change for performance. It is the Lilacs strike arm. With this, I have no issue at all hopping 0.36 gram BBs, and it is a very, very good time. It is very accurate, it is very consistent, it is good. Next up, we have the hop chamber housing stuff. That's all default, no issue there. And I think it's time to get the bolt out. Let's do that. Okay, this is our bolt, and this is my primary bolt. I do have a few bolts, but this is the main one that I will put in any gun that I'm currently using before I take it to a game day. For stuff that I am not using, I have this little bolt cozy just to keep the dust off, because I found that when these are greased, they will pick up dust very, very quickly. So I have a little bolt cozy, and that keeps it all nice and dust free. Right, nozzle. This is a standard Tokyo Marui nozzle. There is no issue with this. Unless it breaks, you don't need to replace it. If you do need to replace it, then I would try and get a Tokyo Marui one. But the Guns Modified one is also apparently good. Don't touch Angry Gun. Bolt body, Tokyo Marui. The top part, Tokyo Marui. Inside valve, we have our rocket valve and rocket valve spring. So the rocket valve spring is standard Tokyo Marui. No need to change anything there. The valve itself, however, is a Feder NPAS, so from Federal Concepts. This is a 3D printed, but not this kind of 3D printing, like high grade 3D printing. It works in a different way to the Ratek NPAS, and it works better. It is more consistent. I've tried it myself. So far, it's in testing for me, but I'm liking it so far. So that is the Feder valve. Back here we have the GMP roller bolt. It's not really a big deal, but it does come with the GMP buffer tube, and it's very, very easy to install. So that's why it's on there. Right, that I believe is the bolt. Yep. Edit cut, because I don't think YouTube will allow me to show this. Okay, now we are back together. So, in terms of why I keep the nozzle as it is, why I keep specifically, we'll also cover the outer barrel. The outer barrel is stock Tokyo Marui, and I like to keep that stock because usually it sticks in. And it doesn't today. Some days it does, some days it doesn't. Why does it do it some days and not others? I don't really know. I'm not sure whether it's temperature, humidity, etc. But the reason I like doing this is because it reduces double feeds. I like it when it sticks. Let's go over to this one. Take the magazine out so it doesn't lock back. There we go. I like having it stick. There is a reason I like having it stick, because if it doesn't, then it can bounce back to the point of interacting of the loading arm interacting with the next BB in the magazine one way or another. So we like to either not have bolt bounce or have it stick in so that that loading arm is not interacting with that next BB and either causing a double feed or a jam, etc. It does happen. So the alternative to it sticking is to have no bolt bounce. So how do we do that? Well, we have a GMP version 2, I think, buffer with shifting weights. Those shifting weights are necessary to reducing bolt bounce. So it is worthwhile when you do get... It is preventative, once again. I forgot another thing about preventative maintenance. The nozzle return spring inside the bolt is upgraded. This is a Eagle 6 150%. The fact that it's 150% is entirely irrelevant. The fact is that it's not Tokyo Marui, which do break, and it's not the dynamic precision, which you are told to expect to break and then bend it back into place and it will work. Or just get one that you don't expect to break. You know. Buffer. GMP adjustable weights. When you do get this, it is worth... I think that's my cat outside. It's worth filming it with your camera when it comes forward, perhaps, and then seeing how much bounce you've got and try and tune it, etc. See what you can do. There are Discord groups that will help you with this. I would recommend going to the Tokyo Marui owners Discord, especially, because they will be able to help you. At the back, we have some rubber washers. I think I dropped one on the floor earlier, actually. Yeah, I did. Rubber washers. This one has been cut down to size, but you can also use pretty much anything. The one thing I would not recommend doing is using metal washers if your buffer is made out of plastic. If it's the default buffer. If it's the default buffer. Excuse the computer glitch there. The reason being, the buffer is slamming into that spacer every single time, and it does get mashed up, and is not good. Why do we have spacers at the back, though? Well, there is a quirk about the MWS, that if there is too much space between your locking point here and your point of hitting the back of the buffer tube here... Have I tuned this correctly? I'm not sure I have. I'll have to have a look at that later. Then you can be hitting the screw on top of the bolt against the top of the lower receiver. It's a lower receiver. It's not good. It's not overly damaging, really, but you shouldn't do it. Usually you can tell by feel, but that doesn't feel like the... Unless I don't have the GMP in this right now. Let's have a look. Okay. Again, I can't show you that because I don't think YouTube likes you disassembling things that look like firearms. But no, this is not the GMP that's in this at the moment. This is the Angry Gun high speed buffer. The GMP then will probably be in that. But I do like to have the GMP in whatever I am using because it reduces that bolt bounce. Wow, I think we are done. Trigger box is a standard Tokyo Marui. People do not like the trigger. I think that's pretty fair. So, creep, 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 creep. Reset, reset, reset. This actually feels pretty good at the moment, I would say. But for Tokyo Marui trigger boxes, they commonly very gritty. And so if you're actually paying attention to it, then it feels horrific. If you're not paying attention to it, it can actually still be a problem because you're pulling. It is borderline bad enough to actually be noticeable while using it properly, which is not ideal. So I have the stock Tokyo Marui trigger box. Other people do upgrade. Their experiences have greatly varied, unfortunately. So I have not opted to upgrade, and I will not opt to upgrade unless something breaks. Guys, I think that is the Mark 18 done. We'll cover one more thing on the magazine. I'm sorry this hasn't been entirely structured as well as I'd like. In the magazine fill valve here, we have a cut down piece of electrical wire, a silicon wire, I believe, where the outer tubing of it has been shoved into here. The reason being for this is that if you fill this with something that isn't duster gas, then the overfill protection that is built into the magazine will trip even if you're not overfilling. So you put in the can and it goes psh everywhere, even though it shouldn't be. Not ideal, and the fix for this is to block that mechanism from working by sticking in that little piece of rubber wiring. There are also specific O-rings that you can buy for this. Again, I would recommend going to that Tokyo Marui Discord. I should probably put a link to that in the description, really. I will try and remember that. Comment if I don't, and remind me. But yeah, get an O-ring in there, and that will fix that problem. The V3s have it less than the V2s, but it is still present. So, I've also had, frankly, to be honest, I've had different magazines in the same version number have different experiences when filling them with higher power gas. So I would give it a go first before immediately switching to those O-rings, because they do fill a lot faster if you don't have the O-rings in them, but if they're spewing gas everywhere, then that's not ideal. Guys, this is the Tokyo Marui Mark 18, except it's not the Tokyo Marui Mark 18. This is my Tokyo Marui Mark 18 that was built off a CQBR. It's light, it's quick, it was not cheap, but you can build one of these fairly cheaply. This, I would say, let's price this up real quick. So 80, 120, 200, 210, 240, 260. We won't cover the magazines. We won't cover the gun. 460. 500. 560. 600. Yeah, about 600 quid. About 600 quid before the gun price. The gun cost me probably about 500 on the nose. I think it was 495. But yeah. So I think that was... I've actually forgotten what I said already. I think it was 650. This is expensive. You do not need to spend this much money building a Mark 18. You can absolutely get by with just buying a base gun, sticking an AliExpress rail on it, then reproduction for the light, keep the battery box cheap, and you can have a standard muzzle device. You don't need that at all. So if we go back here, this is the standard muzzle device that will come with a Mark 18, and it's totally fine. Historically speaking, this has been used on these, and these still are used on the Mark 18 to this day by members of the US Marine Corps, US MARSOC, US Navy will still use the standard muzzle device. So if you're picky about clone correctness, no need to worry about that. And if you're not picky about clone correctness, then you don't need to spend money on fancy stuff like this. And if you're just using it in CQB and in the dark, then you do not need an O-Light Odin, because these are too bright. Use a cheaper light, or people do step up to like Surefire and blah blah blah. Not a terrible idea. I haven't used a Surefire proper yet, except for a couple times when I've used them alongside this, and unfortunately I've had a couple of occasions now where people will be like, oh, look at my Surefire, look at my Surelight, turn it on, and I'll be like, oh yeah, it looks cool, right? And then I turn it on, turn this one on next to them, and they will go, oh, I guess my light must be low on battery or something. So at some point I'm hoping to get a Surefire for myself to actually test them side by side, because so far every time I've seen one it has come with excuses. Nevertheless, you do not need a fancy O-light or really an expensive light if you're using it on a budget. So you can get a reproduction, not like... Do not buy this. it drains battery, and that's not good. But there are replica Surefires that are okay. I'll be back in a sec. Right, sorry about that. The camera can only film in certain times, so I have to check on it every now and then. Right, so yeah, you don't need a fancy light. You can cheap out on that and still be totally fine, or just don't buy a light until it's in your budget. Same for PEG. This is entirely cosmetic. Sorry for bumping the mic. Entirely cosmetic. You don't need to worry about this at all if you're on a budget. Grip, you can get by without. Excuse me. And if you don't have a PEG, then you can run your grip up front and still be totally fine. A lot of people actually, you do see pretty commonplace nowadays, they run the PEG further back so they can have that hand further out. And then they don't use a grip. So you don't need a grip. Rail panels, you don't need them. It's fine. Your hands will be okay. Sling point. This is where we start to get into what I would consider to be essential. I think slings are very important. I think they are very, very beneficial. I think you should get a sling, and I think you should get sling points. Do you need a fancy sling? That's the question, really, isn't it? The issue is, if the webbing on them... Let's pick the sling back up. At this rear point, essentially, in particular, I have had issues with cheaper webbing, using cheaper webbing, so buying webbing myself and just making a sling out of it for the 90s carbine, where because it's a cheap webbing it will not have the traction, and because it was cheap, these clips here, they will not have the traction, and I've actually had them fail at the back where the gun will just drop off me. Thankfully I was still basically holding it at the time, but a sling failing a sling failing while it is slung is the worst case scenario. I'm not sure I would advise cheaping out on sling and sling points. Sling points you can get away with being cheaper, but not get away with not being there for obvious reasons. And 2 points really are optimal. You do see people with 1 points that get by, but 2 points are the best. The Ferro Concept Slingster is a very nice sling, but it is a little bit expensive. Like I say, I'm not sure I can advocate for buying a cheaper sling than this. So that's where things get a bit tricky, I'm afraid. But really, if you're just starting out with wanting a Mark 18 and you're just starting out on that journey on a budget, then yeah, try it without a sling, see how you get on. Because I do claim it's essential, but thinking about it more, for your first couple games with it, no, not at all. Yeah, Optic. That depends what you want, really, doesn't it? There are options all along the line. If you were just starting out on a Mark 18 on a budget, I would recommend a reproduction of a T1 or T2. This particular one is from Evolution Gear. Holy Warrior do one as well. I wouldn't recommend going outside of those two brands unless you're going for Vector optics. They do not make reproductions. They make very, very cheap proper sights. So Vector Optics, Evolution Gear, or Holy Warrior T1. The reason being, they're pretty cheap. I think that cost me maybe 50 quid. So there we go. You see what I mean with these arms mounts? You kind of need a hammer to get them back on. And we'll pop on our T1 there. And then you have a perfectly competent Mark 18. If you're in a woodland scenario, then you can get a magnifier later on. Once it becomes in your budget, you can pop a magnifier on there and have a good time, and that's good. Again, this is what I would recommend for if you're scaling up from a low budget. So start with start with irons. Frankly, I don't have irons on this because it does start to take up a bit more space, and because I'm using it with the Spectre as well, you can't actually put them up anyway, and you saw that getting that off is kind of difficult. So if that fails, I'm not going to go to backup sites with that particular one. But if I'm using an EOTech for the day or a T1, this is not a T1, sorry, this is a reproduction T1, but if I'm using an EOTech or anything, then I will try and have backup sights on if I can. Anyway, so yeah, so you can get along with iron sights. You can upgrade to one of these when you get in budget for that, and then if you do feel like staying with this and going for longer range, then you can upgrade to a magnifier again, Evolution Gear or Holy Warrior. This is a genuine EOTech, but I do have an Evolution Gear in the back there. People say, oh, it's just as good, just as good. It's not just as good. The eye box of this is going to be a little bit better. The eye relief is about, well, it is actually a bit longer. I would say the eye relief is a bit longer on this than that. I would say the reproduction Evolution Gear G33 Magnify eye relief is about the same as you expect from an ACOG. It's a, it's a little bit closer, but it is still usable, definitely. And color reproduction, contrast, edge-to-edge clarity, and edge clarity generally is obviously going to be better on this, as well as durability. That being said, you can actually scratch this with your finger now. I am not a fan of EOTech surface finish. Oh dear. 600 quid I think that cost. Hey ho. So yeah, you can upgrade to a magnifier later on and have that. Rises and such depend on what your face protection situation is. Me personally, I use a Delta Mic Snood, which has like a metal grill in the front, and it's just in the front that covers your mouth. So I do not need any risers or anything to accommodate that. I can use this just as if I'm using it like this and not having a problem at all. If you're using some kind of like paintball mask type situation, then risers start to become a potential necessity. But frankly, I think Delta Mic are pretty good. I think they're worth a look if you're looking to use a rifle with optics. So stock, you can leave the stock default. There's no problem at all. Pistol grip, you can leave it default. Charging handle, if you're on a budget at all, don't upgrade the charging handle. There is no need for it. So you can build a Mark 18 after base gun. I mean, under 100 quid really. You can get something usable. So it's worth thinking about that. This doesn't have to be what you build. Not exactly. If you're on a high budget, I mean, really, you can spend thousands on one of these. You can be like, I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. Work in progress project, barely held together, as you can see. You can see. So this is Vortex Razor. Blah blah blah. This costs like nearly £1,000. You can pop one of these on there. You can get a genuine RIS2 rail for an extra 500 or 600 quid. You can spend thousands on building a Mark 18, but you don't need to. You don't need to at all. You can build one of these on a budget and still have a really, really good time. Guys, that's the Mark 18. It's pretty light. It's pretty quick. It can be cheap or it can be fancy. You've got so many options when it comes to the Mark 18. This is just mine and how I've built mine. I think that covers everything really. Like I said, guys, I'd really appreciate a comment and let me know how I've done here. I'm going to be reading pretty much everything because I haven't done this format before. So yeah, I'd appreciate knowing your thoughts. Let me know how you did. Let me know what you want to see next. We have some options. Probably not the actual Block 2 because we have now had 2 Block 2 videos in a row. But we do have the 90s Delta Carbine, for example. We do have a Mark 12 Mod 0 available as well. I mean, we've got the stuff in the back. Everything's gas because I don't have a problem. I have a concerning amount of solutions. And I think we'll end it there. Cheers, guys.